Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome here. So if you're here for the September edition of the Staff Wellness and Health Booster Session, you're in the right place. We are really excited to present today's session on loneliness. So my name is Dana, Dana Beaton-Stokel. I'm with Shared Health, Mental Health and Addictions. I am the Staff Development Specialist, and I'm the moderator for today's session. Our presenter is Tara Brusso-Snyder. She's the Chief Executive Officer at Sarah Riel Mental Health and Addictions. So I'll tell you a bit about the booster session. I'll do a bit of an intro about Tara, and then we will get started. So humans everywhere are built for connections, interactions, and relationship. We thrive and become resilient when we're strongly connected. Isolation and loneliness are social and public health issues. It affects all ages. It can happen because of situations out of our control. Loneliness is silent suffering. When we're lonely, it is the equivalent of smoking 15 packs of cigarettes a day and can take 10 years off of our lives. This session will talk about strategies to overcome that feeling of isolation and what we can do for ourselves and others. So I'll tell you a bit about Tara. So as I said, she's the CEO of Sarah Riel, and she's a therapist for Recovery of Hope. She's past chair and vice chair of the Addictions Foundation of Manitoba. She's co-chair of the RASO Compassion Network of Manitoba's Mental Health, Substance Use and Addictions Committee, a board member of Equal Housing Initiative, and a member of the Coordinated Access Council to End Homelessness. So before I pass it over to Tara, I just want to note that we will have a few minutes for questions at the end once Tara's done presenting. So if you have any questions that come to mind, you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen, there are a bunch of arrows with different choices. If you go to questions and press that little arrow, it'll open up a question box. So you can type questions in at any point during the presentation, and then we will ask those questions of Tara at the end in the question session. And just so everyone knows, the session today is being recorded, so it will be made available as a streaming video on demand on Shared Health's Mental Health Resources page. So thanks everyone for being here, and I'm going to pass it over to Tara, and I'll just close my camera while she's presenting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much, Dana. Thank you for the introduction and to Shared Health for these very important booster sessions. They are very, very important in being able to talk about a lot of different topics that help all of us in healthcare. So I'm going to acknowledge that today's presentation is a joint effort between Sarah Riel, the Mental Health and Addictions Agency, and Shared Health. So welcome. Today's topic is strategies for dealing with isolation and loneliness in the workplace. And I think that's what makes this one a little bit different, is we are going to talk about what happens when we're lonely at work and also at home. How do we look after others? So we're all built for connection. We all need to interact. We all need to have a relationship. That starts from the very, very beginning. It starts when we build our relationship with our mothers and then eventually our extended family. We need to attach. And that's one of the most significant and important things in our development and in our well-being. When we're able to have a relationship, when we're strongly connected, that's when we have our best and optimum health. But what happens when we can't develop those relationships? What happens when we can't form them? What happens is that we become very much lonely, very much disconnected. And loneliness is a silent suffering. It's one of the most abject possible mental health harms that we can have happen. And when it does, it's very, very difficult. Through COVID-19, especially isolation, has really played a large part into loneliness. So social isolation, the definition, it's defined as a low quantity and quality of contact with others. And that can include a number of contacts, feelings of belonging, fulfilling relationships, or engagement with others, and quality of network members. It's when we're socially isolated and we lack our social contacts and our social roles and mutually rewarding relationships. The definition of loneliness is very subjective because different people will feel lonely depending on their environment and their relationships. People can even feel lonely when in the company of others. And lonely people are not necessarily socially isolated. At the same time, effects of social isolation can lead to feelings of loneliness, especially when an individual expresses or feels disconnected with their solitude. Sometimes loneliness occurs through a distressing experience. It might be the discrepancy between one's desired or achieved relationships, and it causes people to feel empty, alone, unwanted. And it's about belonging. It's about feeling if we can fit in. We can be around a lot of people and we don't feel that we quite fit in. And that can really include work. Work practices can cause loneliness. And sometimes we just believe that we don't actually receive the support or connection we're looking for when, and that's maybe with our friends, with our families, with our partners. And what happens is when we're lonely, we're not happy with ourselves, we're not happy with where we're at, and we want to be with others. We yearn for that. So it's really tied to the quality of one's relationship as well as to the number of one's connections one has. According to research, loneliness affects people of all ages, and more than 1 in 10 people in Canada are often lonely. And 1 in 5 say they have no one to count on for emotional support. Most Canadians don't spend a significant portion of their time outside of their own homes interacting with others. And only about 30% of our population socializes with neighbors. It can be very difficult in vulnerable populations and communities too, where you may face discrimination or you may face issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so as a result, you don't fit in either. The number of people over 50 experiencing loneliness is set to reach 2 million by 2025. And this compares to 1.4 million in 2016-17. So we're actually seeing a 49% increase in loneliness for people as they age. 500,000 older people go at least 5 or 6 days a week without speaking to anyone or without having any contact. 59% of those aged 85 and over, and 38% of those aged 75 to 84 live alone. So loneliness causes people to feel empty, alone, unwanted, and it builds and builds so that people feel very much like they're not connected. Women under 35 express greater feelings of loneliness than other age groups, and it's also likely to increase the risk of death by 26%. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 packs a day in terms of health. And it is such a big part of the problem that in England, they've actually created a ministry of loneliness. So they have a whole department that is related to being lonely. And so what it does is it's associated with greater impacts on health, stroke, high blood pressure, early mortality, and also cognitive decline and dementia. Many, many health problems when people are not connected. And it could be temporary, it's situational, it brings out emotions, it brings out the social settings. People can feel ashamed about being lonely and they don't necessarily want to talk about it or even let others know that they're sitting and suffering in silence and in not being connected. So it's difficult for people to admit or talk about it, and they can often feel that sense of loss and withdrawal from others. Loneliness at the workplace, there are different signs to look for in disconnection. Sometimes people will turn inward. They may be the ones that aren't talking. They're not coming out of their offices. They're not connecting. They might be really hypervigilant about personal emotions and they may avoid others. There will be a less in connection to others. They're not necessarily going to be part of the team or be involved in the teamwork. And therefore it leads to some sloppy work or disengagement. They might skip meetings, they may even skip days, and they only want to talk work because they don't feel there's any validity in the other things that are going on. They may not have a lot to talk about beyond work. They'll isolate, they'll eat lunch at their desks, and you'll notice sometimes quite often people, their appearances may change and they spend too much time working. So work deteriorates, there's a lack of interest, they aren't showing up for new challenges, the routines may change, they will arrive late, leave early. Sometimes they'll turn to substance use in order to void out their feelings, and they communicate less and have an apathetic attitude. And what's really important is that work colleagues and employers are quite often in the best position to notice if someone is lonely. And because people who are connected do better at work or in their lives and live longer lives, it's important to notice if your colleagues are struggling. So there's a downward spiral to loneliness. It starts with the precipitating factors, and that could be, somebody becoming an empty nester. It could be retirement, immigration. It could be divorce or separation, fights and conflict with others, a graduation, a death of a loved one, birth of a child, trouble finding housing, loss of jobs, new jobs, and certainly the economic downturn. So that's what leads to people feeling lonely. And then what happens is they stay away from others. That could be due to stress in their lives. It might be due to just an unnatural shyness or just not being outward towards other people. So they start spending time alone, no motivation to go out or interact or mingle with others. And they start to develop anxiety. They may not talk to anyone. They won't keep eye contact. They spend less and less time with people. And then they start to have the cognitive thoughts that go through their head. No one likes me. Nobody wants me. I don't belong. I'm not good enough. I'm not a likable person. And then from there, it leads to stop participating, stop socializing, stop trying, and they have depression and anxiety. So what causes loneliness? There are many different types of causes. It can be trauma. It could be the isolation of working from home, bullying, And especially in the workplace, it could be a toxic work environment. It might be a mental health challenge that somebody is trying to overcome. It could be um, perfectionism. It could be family ties and estrangements. It can be an attitude of negativity, or somebody who's feeling very vulnerable and lacks trust. There's a great many things that can lead to it. And what we see in the workplace is we also see it happening when there's unresponsive management or unresponsive colleagues, when you're feeling burned out or you have compassion fatigue, a too heavy workload, not enough ability to speak up or have control in your workplace, and workplace bullying. And then this, of course, leads to all types of different symptoms and a lot of different real repercussions. So lots of disconnection and poor health outcomes mean a lot of different health challenges. It's found that people who are connected have been found to live longer lives than those who are not connected. So how do we build against loneliness? First of all, we have to recognize that compassion can play a huge part in someone who is lonely. And when people are felt that they're understood, or when they feel that someone can protect them and help them, that builds compassion, and then that leads to cooperation. It also promotes individual well-being, it improves trust, and it improves mental health. When we have a compassionate world, we see that there is recovery, and we especially see it with somebody who is suffering loneliness or isolation. The definition of compassion is to suffer with a person, feel for a person who is understanding, noticing them, feeling empathy, and also being able to tolerate their uncomfortable feelings. So a response that you can give for someone who, through compassion, who is suffering from loneliness or isolation, is to provide resources and help, but it's also just sitting with them, noticing, involving and being aware of a person's suffering, either by cognitively recognizing the suffering or by experiencing an unconscious physical reaction or affective reaction to it. Understanding is where we are non-judgmental, we're kind, we're tolerant, and we let life happen. We don't blame, we don't condemn, we do not shame. And we also understand that people will have different feelings and that they may have their own emotional suffering. And we adopt and understand that person's perspective. We can tolerate the uncomfortable feelings, and whether they may be sitting in distress or anger or fear, and we sit with them, and we're careful not to overthink or analyze. And we respond by having a desire. We need to act when we feel compassion. We need to act to help, and it's in the actual action where we can make the most difference. So what can you do as an employer or colleague? First of all, assess the situation, recommend EAP programs, connect them to resources, and then create social time for people to be able to get together at work. That might be dressing up for Halloween, it might be doing potluck events, or it just might be meeting on a Friday afternoon with no work expectation, but just being able to have a laugh or a chance to socialize. Offering different types of physical work can help, whether it might be a yoga class in the workplace or even a full gym with equipment. plan team building, social exercises and opportunities, and also be aware of what is available for your own mental health training. I'm just going to play a video. I love this story, and I just thought it's a wonderful story about what we can do and our attitudes that we can take when we want to help somebody. I just love this video because it really shows us our opportunity to be able to, when somebody's suffering, to be able to provide them with the ability to move them in a direction. And what we need to do is we need to move them in that direction where they're able to go with gentleness and hearing their story. And especially with people who are lonely or isolated, that really does play a big part for them in being able to make sure that we can help them. Just trying to move my slide deck along, and I'm having a bit of trouble. No, I know we don't want to do that. No. No, I can't seem to get out of this. Okay, I'm going to have to probably come in and then come back out. Sec, I'm going to try and see if I can advance it. No. Oh, now I'm into a different one. Darn. Okay. I may just have to go now that that's happened to not be able to show you the full slide. I don't know how to do that.
I think if you just click from current slide at the top left corner,
that
might work.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. Oh. We'll see. No, I'm not sure, Dana, because I'm getting the.
Right. I don't remember how we got from this view to the large. We can still see it though. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. So I wanted to talk about now when we use the gentle approach, what we can do in terms of protecting people, especially at the work site, and how we can utilize the gentle approach that can really help people. So one of the things that's very important is that we build accountability. So take a look in the your own mirror. Are you setting an example for work-life balance? Are you getting exercise? Are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you connecting with others? Are you avoiding with substance use? We all need to model good behavior. We also have to look at ourselves. How is our life balance in terms of our connection to others? And then from there, create a commitment to people. To be able to alleviate loneliness and isolation, we have to really commit to wanting to be with others. And with that, we'll need to build trust. So are you invested in your relationship with your colleagues? Are you committed to helping them develop and grow? Do you sincerely care about the well-being of those you depend on and who depend on you? And are you open and honest? Do you know how each other and your employees are handling the workplace? Are you checking in on them? And have everyone contribute. Everyone needs to feel needed. So who is accountable for the connection? Discover a reason. People need a reason to be at work. They must find energy and enjoyment in their jobs. What's important to them? And are they aligned with their strengths? Be clear. Be clear on the outcomes. Be clear on what the accountabilities are for each job. Be clear on what the expected results are. And you can do that through having leadership with a good, strong work environment, competence, and attitude, and by bringing your own best self to work and helping people feel safe and better about themselves. So no gossiping, speaking well of others in their absence, no blaming or complaining, no excuses, and replace everything with gratitude. Bring a generous spirit, act ethically and honestly, and hire for character. Pick people with good values and take time if the people are struggling to spend that time with them to help them. Understand that policies can really help and that policies can put everybody in an ability to understand what their expectations are. Because when people don't know, that's when they tend to start to self-isolate. That's when they tend to start to break down. And provide any early intervention through any of the EAP or EFAP programs. Review and review your benefit plan on an ongoing basis. and make it easy for employees to access information, communicate frequently, regularly, and provide information on available resources. And always start with the positive attitude and then focus on anything that might be negative and acknowledge if there's a breakdown. Sometimes people will withdraw and they do it to minimize the damage, and instead it may create more hardship. But acknowledge that that's going on in order to find out why, and then always do follow up with people. And education can play a very large role in helping people understand what they might need. So bring in guest speakers, just like today with the booster program. It's a great example of how we can address our own mental health or when we worry about mental health for others. So what can you do for others? Reach out, engage them. We all need connection, and we need to be physical too. So get together, go for coffee, hear their stories, invite people for lunch, and cautiously integrate people into more social settings. Stay in touch. People that write notes, check on you on your birthday, just follow up. I met somebody the other day who writes down everything on a calendar, check on so-and-so in 2 weeks. All those things are really lovely things that you can do. And what can you do for you? Know that you're a worthy person. Know that you can continue to work on yourself. Know that you're loved, you have love, and you can express love. Know that there's a spiritual side to all of us, and invest in your spiritual side. Taking the initiative, some days it could be very hard, but taking the initiative to reach out and ask for help, or just to be able to set up some time where you might be able to spend with another person, or you might want to talk to a work colleague that you may not have had contact with. These are all things that you can do. And there are many tools for loneliness. And some of these tools are to meditate, be mindful, journal gratitude, go for a walk, volunteer, find meaningful employment, become a best friend with yourself, find beauty in nature, gratitude, inner sense of peace, and play. Sometimes we've forgotten how to entertain ourselves, and when we allow ourselves to become playful, we then take away quite often what loneliness brings, which is boredom. And we're also free ourselves when we use tools for loneliness. We free ourselves from guilt or shame, and that allows us to let go. It allows us to be creative. It allows us to connect with ourselves. And when we're connected with ourselves, those are the steps that allow us to reach out and connect with others. So these tools all build an ability to be comfortable. Good. I just want to talk about one project that we have at Sarah Real, and we found during COVID, we started a warm line in March of 20. We've had now nearly 47,000 calls to our warm line, and we've been keeping track of what they are. 20% of those 47,000 calls all relate to isolation and loneliness. People are suffering right now here in Manitoba. They are feeling very disconnected. And I thought that would change about a year ago when certainly all the mandates started to change, but it actually hasn't. What we have seen is that people continue to be lonely. They continue to be isolated. So we started a volunteer program with our warm line, and it addresses people who are feeling that they need connection. And we have volunteers go out and meet in the community. and they're able to provide that connection. It's been a wonderful program, and it's so much needed. But what it has taught me is that people that are isolated or lonely, they actually do want to meet. So if you have someone in your life that's feeling that way, or if you're feeling that way, the best way to start is just to try some simple things like doing the connection, maybe having coffee or getting together in the community. So I'm going to stop there now, Dana, and I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
There are a few questions. I will read those out now. So one question is, there's an increase in loneliness as people age, but is it partly because there are more people who are older? So the question is, has the real number increased? Or is it just, there's already more older people
No,
out there?
the real number has increased. It's increased across the board. And so, yes, while we have an aging population and you would see a similar, maybe perhaps growth in that, no, more and more people are reporting that they're lonely. And that's why we're seeing things like England developing a ministry of loneliness. There's also an increase in loneliness among young people. And young people are becoming more socially isolated, especially through social media, through that need to always be perfect. So where we have an older generation that isn't connected, and that's partially because families aren't living in as close proximity anymore. People are living longer with larger health concerns. For example, my mother, I'm still fortunate to have my mother, but she feels lonely on many days because she expressed that all of her friends are going. And so the reliance on family, and that's hard too on the next generation or even the third generation, because we're all kind of busy, leading very busy lives right now, but we're not having that connection. So whether it's a young person on social media, it's part of the sandwich generation that's trying to meet needs of both, or it's the older generation that might be in a nursing home environment or assisted living. This world is a more lonely world.
Yeah, for sure. There is a question about the warm line and if it's still open and what the number would be for that.
The warm line is open, and we are continuing to get significant calls on it. I'll just get the number up for you right now. And yes, it's interesting. I thought we would start seeing a drop off. We have not seen a drop off. And in fact, we're seeing more and more new callers call in. And I think that the lovely thing about the warm line is we don't time people. You can call in for any reason, and we get all types of reasons calling in. It is, everyone who answers has lived experience. They've been trained in peer support. They also have access to our Seneca Services, which is a 5-day respite program. And that's a tremendous program too for people that are lonely or isolated, because they can go into a apartment-like environment. They have meals cooked for them, but they get to also talk with people with lived experience. The Wormline number is 204-942-9276.
Thank you. There's one other question about the warm line, which was partly answered, and it's whether volunteers are the ones that answer the phone and if it's 24 hours.
It's 24 hours, 7 days a week. We've been fortunate to be able to receive grants, and so we have trained staff that answer the phone. We hope that we can continue to do that, but we know this is such a strong commitment to the community. If at any point our funding were to diminish, we would actually then start training volunteers. But, you know, it's interesting. So the four four reasons that people call in, it's isolation, loneliness, depression, and anxiety. And then it's followed by relationship issues or financial issues.
Okay. And that was the next question was, what are the main reasons that people call in? Someone else has asked if we can put the number into the chat. So if you can say that again, I will put that in now. So you said it was 204
942 9276.
9276, and I will send that to everyone. So that's in there now. One person said, I have a question that you might not be able to answer. Do we think that some of the increase in loneliness among seniors is due to fewer seniors groups being in place? Like, I guess some of those groups where you used to, like, I know Deer Lodge near where I live has a seniors program, but I think their
Yeah.
hours have been reduced too. So
Yeah, I think we definitely saw it through COVID. There's a real need to be able to spend more time with our seniors population. Sarah Riel's been looking at, as part of our one-to-one, going out and visiting with seniors, whether they're in a care home or assisted living. People do need that connection. And what it is it's just that sometimes seniors don't know where to go or how to find the resources. We also have to be better at placing resources with seniors. And, we're also trying to keep people in their homes, which is wonderful. But when we keep people in their homes, they can be isolated and lonely. And we need to address that. We have a great home care program. We have Meals on Wheels. But when you talk to the people who deliver Meals on Wheels, a large significant part of their job in doing that as a volunteer is not delivering the meal, it's the connection. That might be the only person that they talk to, somebody receiving the meal that day. So yes, really needing to spend more time with seniors.
someone else put more of an observation rather than a question that says, could part of it be that we don't, like our busy lives, I guess we don't have time to model for our kids the types of connections they should later have as adults? Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a really good point. And certainly modeling can play a significant part. You do have to have the contacts or the friendships in your life. And it's estimated that if we, have 5 really good close friends, then we're very lucky in life. But connection can help in other ways. If you're in a sports group or you're doing that a book club, or you're connecting, those are all important ways that you can actually get out and meet with others, and that's a really good model for our children. The other good model for our children, and certainly research has shown this over and over, and our busy lives get harder and harder, but being able to sit down and have dinner every night and put our phones away, and that's where children or youth or young adults, they need to connect to learn how to talk. And that's certainly a job for parents as models.
One other person's made an observation that they feel like often in seniors couples that there'll be services for one person based on like an illness or things like that, but often not support for the person looking after the other.
And the caregiver can really suffer. I actually spent 10 years in long-term care. So I saw a lot of difficulty for the caregiver because they're spent, they don't have energy, they have to look after people for a very long time. And then what happens is their health deteriorates, and then you start worrying about that individual over the individual that might require more care. And so it is something that families need to watch, is that both people in the relationship are getting what they want. The other unfortunate thing, and this leads to loneliness and isolation, is we separate people who've been together all their lives. So you might get a bed that opens up in a personal care home, but then the spouse is separated. And that's not a good way to address loneliness or isolation either, because these are people that have chosen to be together all their lives and would want to be together and live together and continue that, and that's something I think our society needs to address.
Yes. Someone else says, just an observation that when the death of someone close to you happens, that there's now less social connections since COVID, that it feels more isolating, that people are connecting mainly by text.
People do connect by text, and when you go through the loss, especially if it's a partner, I have been widowed, you find that your friendships change too. So you will have been a part of a couples group, and then all of a sudden you're that extra person. It's really, really tough when you're grieving and when you're suffering the loss, and then at the same time you're having to provide and find new connections. It can be extremely lonely. And I must say that's probably where I struggled most of all with loneliness in my own personal life, was after the grief started to happen. So you have to really start to do tools. You have to reach out to others, and they may become different. They might become different circle groups. You may have to pick up different activities. All those things change. Not only are you grieving for your lost life, but you're also having to really, really try a different type of life. It's very challenging.
Related to that, someone else asked, what grief support groups are available rurally, if we know of any?
So there are some compassion groups available. There are the groups, they're not specifically related, but there are peer support groups in the community that the different organizations, the peer support organizations, whether it's mood disorders or anxiety or peer connections, they offer them. There will be local grief groups through the hospitals. You have to look for them, and they can be difficult to find. There's also options to go online and look for grief groups online.
Okay. One other person noted that they say that I find that many of my friends married and I'm still single, so it's hard to keep that connection as I'm the one out, like
Yeah, it's the same
unpartnered.
situation, but in reverse. So then you see all your friends get married, they have children. I know in my therapy practice, I have seen an awful lot of people who feel isolated from that. So they've gone through with their group of friends. Their friends don't mean to do it, but they just get busy with their lives and with what's going on, and then you feel very much alone. That's a tough situation to be in. That can be really isolating, and you'll call and they'll say, oh, we'd love to get together, but if they've got children, they're busy with their children, or they're going to 1-year-old birthday parties or things like that. So there it's almost where you have to make an additional effort to find some new interests, to look at, can you connect, ask your friends. I know I've, they're the dating apps, but they can be scary. But you can ask friends, do you know of somebody who might be single, or for being involved with, some of the different sports or naturalist groups or church groups. That's where you kind of have to really go outside of yourself, even when it's so hard and you might not feel like doing it.
As an aside, my daughter, who's 22, found her closest friend on a friend app. Like she described it to me as it's like a dating app, but it's just for friendship. And you can say the kinds of things you like to do, and then they'll match you with people. And even though she's young, she used this Bumble friends group, and she and her closest friend now tell everyone that that's how they found each other, to try to encourage people to use those friend matching groups, because she said the same thing with social media. You can know lots of people, but they might not be people that you can actually go for a walk with, or go for, tea and dessert with, or join a sports group with, or go to a movie or a concert with. So
Yeah,
that might be.
that's a great idea, and good for your daughter for taking that, because it takes a bit of, especially when you're feeling like you're withdrawn, it takes something out of you to have to go to do that. So it's a brave step, but it can pull you very significantly out of that feeling of loneliness. We'll talk on one other thing though that can be very helpful. We can live in solitude. And Henry Nouwen, who's a Catholic priest, writes about this quite often. We can actually have a very good time with ourselves. It's knowing the difference between what is solitude and what is loneliness. So loneliness is a terrible, dark feeling, but living in solitude is a feeling of I'm comfortable with myself. I can do things. And then when you reach out to others from that point of view, it sometimes gets easier.
So there's no other questions about the topic, but one person did ask if the slides will be sent out. And generally we don't send the slides out to people, because the recording, even with the visuals, is available on the website. Any other last minute questions that people want to pop in the chat, or any last thoughts from you, Tara?
Thank you for the honor of being able to share this time with all of you. And I just encourage you, if you're feeling lonely, to do some of the tools that are available. And if you notice someone who's lonely, to reach out, and reach out gently.
Well, thank you for that, Tara, and thank you everyone for joining us. That was a great presentation. I feel like it was helpful for people of all ages. There's a bunch of people saying thanks, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and resources. Is there a website where one can find resources around loneliness? Thank you for your time and knowledge. I don't know if there's, someone said thank you, great presentation. I don't know if there's a website with resources just around loneliness, is there?
And I did, I go on CJOB on Sunday mornings quite often, and I did do one morning on loneliness, so I actually researched it. I didn't find a site, but I can tell you there's lots of available resources on the internet around this subject. So type it in, you'll be amazed at how many people experience loneliness and how much of a topic that can be explored with it.
So lots of other thank yous and great presentation. So thanks everyone for coming. Our next edition of the Booster Session series is on November 21st, and the topic that day will be caregiver burnout. The presenter for that session is Cameron Tyndall, who is Director of Mental Health and Addictions at Sarah Riel Mental Health and Addictions. And information about how to register for that is either on the health provider's website, or it will be shared in the usual channels, how you would have found this one as well. So thank you again, Tara, for your presentation, and thanks everyone who attended. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tara. Bye all.